Rain tapped softly against the apartment windows. The sound gentle and soothing, everything their home used to be. Aisha stood in the small kitchen, her hands trembling slightly as she stirred the soup. She was 8 months pregnant, and every movement felt heavier than the last. But she didn't complain. She rarely did. All she wanted was peace. She glanced at the clock. It was nearly midnight. Kareem wasn't home yet. Again. At first, she had believed his excuses, late meetings, sudden business dinners, unexpected travel. But the whispers from neighbors, the unfamiliar perfume on his shirts, the cold distance in his eyes, they had slowly stitched together a truth she could no longer ignore. Still, she waited. Because she loved him. Because she carried his child. The front door suddenly swung open, slamming against the wall. Kareem stumbled in, his face hard and irritated. "You're still awake," he snapped, tossing his keys onto the table. "I was waiting for you," Aisha said softly. "I made soup. You haven't been eating properly." "I didn't ask for it." She swallowed her hurt. "At least sit down. You must be tired." Before he could answer, a pair of high heels clicked into the hallway. A tall woman stepped inside, dripping rainwater onto the floor. She wore a red dress and a smug smile. Aisha's heart dropped. "Kareem, who is she?" Kareem sighed, as if annoyed by the question. "This is Layla. She's staying here tonight." Aisha stared at him, unable to breathe. "Staying? Here? In our home?" Layla smirked. "Relax. It's not like he hasn't told you about me." Aisha's hand instinctively moved to her belly. The baby shifted, as if sensing her fear. "Kareem," she whispered, "please. I'm pregnant. I can't handle this stress. Whatever is going on, we can talk." "I'm tired of talking," he interrupted coldly. "I want a divorce." The words hit her harder than any slap. "A divorce?" Her voice cracked. "Now? When your child is about to be born?" "I don't love you anymore," he said bluntly. "I want to be with someone who understands me." Layla leaned against the wall, watching the scene like it was entertainment. Aisha's eyes filled with tears. "We built this life together. I supported you when you had nothing. I worked 2 jobs so you could start your business. I stood by you through everything." "And now I don't need you anymore," Kareem replied. The room spun. She held onto the counter for support. "Please," she whispered. "At least wait until the baby is born. I have nowhere to go." Kareem's face hardened. "That's not my problem." He grabbed a suitcase from the bedroom and threw it into the hallway. "Pack your things. You're leaving tonight." Aisha stared at him in disbelief. "It's raining. It's cold. I can barely walk." "Then you should have thought about that before clinging to a man who doesn't want you." Her chest tightened. The baby kicked sharply, and a sudden wave of pain shot through her stomach. "Kareem, something's wrong." She gasped. He rolled his eyes. "Stop pretending." But the pain grew stronger. Her legs gave out, and she collapsed onto the floor, clutching her belly. "Please, help me," she cried. "The baby." Layla stepped back, clearly uncomfortable. "Kareem, maybe you should call someone." He hesitated, annoyed more than concerned. Aisha's vision blurred. She felt warmth spreading beneath her. Her water had broken. I'm going into labor." The words barely left her lips before darkness swallowed her whole. She fainted on the cold floor, rain still whispering against the windows, as the man who once promised to protect her simply stared. And outside, the sound of distant sirens slowly grew closer. The sirens grew louder, cutting through the storm like a cry for help the night refused to ignore. Layla paced nervously near the door. "Kareem, do something. She's not moving." Kareem's jaw tightened. "She's probably pretending to make me feel guilty." But as he looked at Aisha lying motionless on the floor, her face pale, her body curled protectively around her belly, something inside him stirred, though it wasn't guilt. It was fear. What if she really is in labor? Layla whispered. Before Kareem could respond, a loud knock shook the door. "Police! Open up!" Kareem froze. "Police? Who called them?" Layla's eyes widened. Maybe the neighbors heard her scream. The knocking grew louder. Open the door now. Reluctantly, Kareem walked over and pulled it open. 2 officers stood in the hallway, rain dripping from their jackets. We received a call about a disturbance, one of them said. Is everything all right here? Before Kareem could answer, the other officer spotted Aisha on the floor. Sir, step aside. They rushed in. One officer knelt beside her, checking her pulse. She's alive, but barely conscious. And she's in labor. The other officer's face darkened. What happened here? Kareem stammered. She just collapsed. It's not my fault. Layla avoided eye contact. The officer stood up slowly. Neighbors said they heard yelling, and a woman crying for help. Kareem forced a laugh. You know how emotional pregnant women can be. The officer's eyes narrowed. You threw her out, didn't you? That's between me and my wife. The officer's voice grew firm. Not when someone's life is at risk. At that moment, Aisha stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, filled with pain. My baby. She whispered. We are here to help you, the officer said gently. Tears rolled down her cheeks. He pushed me out. I begged him, but he didn't care. The room fell silent. The officer slowly stood and turned to Kareem. Sir, you're coming with us. What? For what? Kareem snapped. For domestic abuse and endangerment, the officer replied calmly. You can explain everything at the station. Kareem's face turned red. This is ridiculous. But the handcuffs clicked around his wrists anyway. Layla stepped back, her confident smirk long gone. Meanwhile, paramedics rushed in with a stretcher. They carefully lifted Aisha onto it. You're going to be okay, one of them said softly. And so is your baby. As they carried her out into the rain, Aisha glanced back one last time. Kareem stood in handcuffs, his face pale. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel fear. She felt hope. Because sometimes, justice doesn't arrive quietly. Sometimes, it comes with sirens. The hospital lights were bright and cold, but the hands that held Aisha's were warm. You're safe now, a nurse whispered. Aisha drifted in and out of consciousness as doctors worked quickly around her. The labor had started too early, and both her life and the baby's were at risk. Stay with us, Aisha, the doctor urged. You're very strong. Tears slipped down her temples. She wasn't sure she was strong anymore. Not after everything that had happened. But then she felt it, a tiny movement inside her. Her baby. And that was enough. Hours later, the sound of a newborn's cry filled the room. A nurse smiled. It's a boy. Aisha burst into tears. Her heart swelling with love the moment they placed him in her arms. He's perfect, she whispered. But joy quickly turned to worry. Where will we go? She asked the nurse. I have no home now. The nurse hesitated. Actually, someone wants to see you. A tall man in a police uniform stepped into the room. His expression was gentle. I'm Officer Rahman, he said. I was there last night. Aisha nodded weakly. I spoke to social services, he continued, and to a local women's shelter. They have a room ready for you and your baby. Her eyes widened. For us. He smiled. No one deserves to be left alone like that, especially not a mother. Aisha clutched her son closer, tears streaming down her face. Thank you, she whispered. Sometimes, kindness comes from strangers. And sometimes, those strangers become the reason you start believing in the world again. The shelter was small but warm. The walls were painted soft colors, and the air smelled of fresh bread and soap. For the first time in months, Aisha felt safe. The other women welcomed her like family. They helped her with the baby, shared meals, and listened to her story without judgment. Days turned into weeks. Her son, whom she named Adam, grew stronger each day. And so did she. One afternoon, Officer Rahman visited the shelter. I have some news, he said. Kareem's case went to court. The evidence was clear. He's facing serious charges. Aisha nodded quietly. She didn't feel anger anymore. Just relief. You also received compensation, he added. And there's a small apartment. available for you, through a support program. Her eyes filled with tears again. A home, a future, a life beyond the pain. 6 months later, sunlight poured through the windows of Aisha's tiny apartment. Adam giggled as she lifted him into the air. "You're my little miracle," she whispered. There was a knock at the door. It was Officer Rahman, holding a small teddy bear. "For Adam," he said. Aisha smiled warmly. "You've done so much for us." He shook his head. "You did the hard part. You survived." She looked at her son, her heart full. Once, she had thought her life ended the night Kareem threw her out. But that night hadn't been an ending. It had been a beginning. Because sometimes, the people who break your heart are the same ones who push you toward the life you truly deserve. And sometimes, justice doesn't just punish the guilty. Sometimes, it gives the innocent a second chance at happiness.